Welcome to the Carlisle Local School District Board meeting for Monday, August 26, 2024. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Mrs. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Jewell.
Here.
Mrs. McIntosh. Absent. Mrs. Milligan.
Here.
You could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any visitors here with visitors' comments? Okay, we'll move on to Treasurer's Report. Mr. Bassler.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. A couple non-action items before we get started. First is the OSBA Capital Conference, which I have made, reservations, but registered. There'll be four members of our party going up in November. And then also I sent something out about the fall conference, which is Thursday, October 10th. And come to find out, we have a football game that night. So we will not be attending the conference for the fall regional conference. So action items. I need approval for the minutes from the last regular board meeting, which was July 22nd.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Ready.
First by Mrs. Morris.
I'm ready.
Sorry. And a second by Mr. Jewell. A roll call, please.
Mrs. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell, Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Next is a financial report, which was part of your packet. As always, this time of year, it's a heavy time of year getting things started for month-end July. Most of the ordering was done in July. Most of the bill paying will be done in August. So when you approve next month's financial report, you'll see a lot more spending than you see in the July month. But again, as we're moving along, no surprises. Everything is kind of falling into place. Is our predictions exactly right? No, but nothing out of the ordinary. If there's anything that's a large variance, of course, I would bring that up to you all. But we're progressing as normal.
Okay. Do we have a motion? First by Mr. Jewell.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Milligan. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's my extensive report for the month.
Thank you. I am glad to have our new superintendent, Robert Fisher, tonight, his first official board meeting, and I'm going to hand it over to him.
All right, well, for my non-action items, first, just want to kind of go through just a few of the updates. First of all, it's been a great start to the year. When we did our opening meeting last Monday with the new staff, you could definitely feel the energy and the positivity. I think hopefully a lot of that is just due to the excitement that I naturally bring to my position. Do want to send out some thank yous, obviously, to our custodial staff for the work that they did throughout the course of the summer to get the building ready, to our tech staff, and our same thing. And I know we're still coming up with some updates that our tech staff is working on, but appreciate all the things that they've done. Gail and our kitchen staff did a great job with our breakfast on Monday, and we actually have talked about some other things that we're going to do throughout the course of the year. And to our staff in general, our teachers and our aides, they have truly made me feel very welcomed, and I think that's important as we get started. I have to thank my leadership team and, of course, Mr. Bassler for kind of moving me along and bringing me up to speed in such a quick fashion. But obviously there's been a lot of things that we've had to deal with, and I appreciate everything that they've done. And really, truthfully, and I will say this, Dan has been great throughout this transition. If there's been an issue or something that's taken place, Dan has either called or texted. So it helps that we've actually known each other prior to coming in, but it certainly has solidified our team and our process up in the central office. And also for you guys, thank you for taking time to meet individually to talk a little bit about where you were at with things. I think that was very important to help me move forward. The other two groups that we want to make sure we thank are Craig Harris. If you don't know Craig, I'm not sure where you've been because Craig has been a huge help. If you, back in the, between the kitchen or the elementary cafeteria and the preschool wing, there are that concrete area. We have 6 brand new picnic tables out there that Craig donated. And actually there are 6 more coming. So that's just the beginning of that. But he's been a huge positive person to talk with and get to know. And then also, if you weren't sure, on our very first day, People's Bank came out here and welcomed our staff back. So thank you to them as well. Couple things that we're focusing on just as a general information for you guys as we start this new process. Number one has been communication. I really feel it's important to communicate what's going on in our building to our community, not just classroom-wise, but also just activity-wise. So I do feel like we've seen an uptick in our communication.
Yes, I think it's good. I like that.
Every week, hopefully you got it today too, there was an email or a text that I send out, and I used Final Forms for the first time as well to send out our weekly update that has information. And as the year progresses, there'll be a lot more information that comes out on that. I am getting ready to send out some safety information that'll go out first thing tomorrow morning. It's all set and ready to go. Obviously, academics will be a main focus, and there's some things that we'll be looking at. Our first instructional leadership team meetings will be coming up. I'm actually meeting with our union leadership on Wednesday to talk about the process, and I've kind of already made it aware of my belief in where we should be academically and making those meetings about improvement and what we can do to hit the weak areas that we're dealing with on our report card. And honestly, with the communication, the big thing is just making it a place where kids want to be, and that's what our goal should be. I'm going to hand out to you some information that we'll need to address more in September. If you can take one and pass it down. Do want to bring up and talk a little bit about the track and kind of go through some information. What I'm going to ask from you tonight is more just a direction if you are content with where we're going. And then in September, what we're going to actually do is have a formal recommendation for you at that point. But what you see here is the breakdown for the reconstruction project of our track. The price that came back was slightly more than what we originally had anticipated. I think when the original quote was there, it was about $500,000. Now we're looking at roughly $870,000. I think the thing to keep in mind with this is this quote, the original quote did not reflect the additional parts such as our high jump, long jump, pole vault areas, which we have included within this. So while there was a price increase, it was probably, if you take out those things, you're probably only looking at $100-ish or so $1,000 more, which everything is expensive nowadays. To pay for this, this is the thing that we're going to need to determine as a board as we go forward. We're probably looking at only spending a total of about $750,000 roughly. This is a conservative estimate that the Motts Group gave us. And if you look at the document I gave you, it kind of gave us a breakdown of some items that we could look at to substitute out and or find another way to do it. The 2 items that are highlighted at the very bottom are items that we fully believe that as a school, we can take that out of our project and find a different way to fund them. The biggest one is being $80,500, which is for the finishing, the timing system, and the conduit that goes underneath that. We believe that that's something we could do and take care of on our own for a much cheaper cost. And then the other part of that is the resodding. We have a facilities person that is able to be outside. We believe that they could do that as well. The other items that were in here, looking at the one is $12,500 for hauling of the different materials that are pulled off of the old track. We could certainly look at having somebody else do that cheaper or maybe in kind, but the timing of it for us is probably more of a concern. Can we time it up when the construction starts? Can their schedules be free? And those are just some things that we feel it's probably better to make sure that we just tie it in with the project, not let us worry about it, base it on the time of the construction company that's doing this. So as I said earlier, we're probably looking at about $750,000 to do it. Now, in order to do this, right now with the money that we have encumbered, we're about $250,000 in total donations. And then we also, which I think we've mentioned before, Dan's idea to do this is to try to eliminate taking as much, anything out of general fund, if at all possible, and using other sources. We do have our interest-bearing account that right now sits at about $135,000. So if you total those two things up, we're remaining about $370,000 roughly, give or take. Now, each month, based on current interest, we earn about $35,000 in that interest-bearing account. We don't know after September what that will change to, because I believe the government is coming out with some rate changes coming up. So we have no idea what that's going to do. We don't figure it would be, even at 3%, it would still bring in a significant amount of money that if we stockpile, we would be able to help pay for that. I talked with the Moats Group today. Looking at the timeline, if we make a motion and approve something in September, we would sign and give them an official contract in October. We would look at making 5 different payments throughout the course of the time we agree to the end of construction. Roughly, construction would be from April to July-ish. Sometime the final track would be done in July. They can't start any earlier because they have to wait on the asphalt company and the weather to clear. So typically, as I talked to Stephen, he said that usually April is a safe date. Based on that, we would make about 5 different payments. We would pay about a 10 or 15% down payment once we do the initial, yes, we're interested. Once the project is drawn out and the plans are made, we would make another payment. Sometime in January, February, we'd make a 3rd payment, and then we would make 2 other installments as we go through, with the final payment being done in July when the project's completed. Based on calculations, if it stayed at $35,000 a month, you're looking at roughly 11 months, which would bring us at about $385,000, which would pay off any remaining amount of that track, and we would not have to go into general fund for it. Now, if we decided to and we needed to, that would not be a concern. The ultimate piece is we need to get this done, and we need to do it right, and we need to do it once, and not have piecemealing it together as we go through. So what I wanted to do is kind of go through that with you. I know the question was asked about why this group, and I think the easiest answer to use is we are part of, and I think you've heard this term before, the Southwest Ohio Educational Purchasing Council. And what that group does is that takes care of any bidding for us at any point. They still go out and they still do bids, but it's based on vendors that they have pre-approved, that they have, what's the word I'm looking for, vetted. And they know that based on that information, we are getting the lowest prices. They will still put bids out. We would still hope to get 2 to 3 bids for every item that needs to be bid out. And we would look at it, and based on that, we would go with what we believe is the most reasonable cost. It may not necessarily always be the lowest, based on the same criteria we would use if we were bidding something for ourselves. And I know that question was asked about the bidding piece. So we still do follow that process. It's just run through the Moats Group as opposed to us. But we as a district will get the information and the numbers based on what the bids have come in. So he told us that this was a conservative price. There is a chance that it could be less, but he did not anticipate it to be more than what we have. So based on that, I guess we're looking for, Dan, did I miss anything or did I cover it all?
You're pretty thorough.
Thank you. So based on that, are you comfortable with the information we've given, that when Dan and I come back in September, that we would put an actual bid together to approve the project and move forward?
So how much have we raised?
About $250,000 as of right now.
Okay.
And there's, so 250, and there's another 135,000 in interest funds right now. And then on top of that, we would do whatever is remaining of that interest funds. I keep calculating.
The interest instead.
Yeah, it would
So
not
we
come,
still have
the
that
plan
money.
is to not take it out of general fund.
So we still have the general fund money.
We wouldn't donate
No.
150? So we,
We're going to do our best to pay for this out of interest funds.
okay.
It may not exactly match up when we all get said and done,
So we may have to change it
But-
at the end.
we're going to try really hard. If interest rate stays the same as it is right now, and we continue to collect what we're collecting now on a monthly basis,
In 8 months, $385,000 roughly.
we should
Or
be
11
able
months.
to bring in enough to
Cover every cost.
cover the cost.
The remaining cost, if this figure stays the same, is about $371.
Is that the
It's
interest?
not gonna get any cheaper.
No.
No.
We do it.
I agree. Is that the interest on the 15, is that interest on that? Where are you getting the interest from?
The interest is we have money in Star, Ohio.
Okay,
It collects about 5.5% per month. We have $7 million invested
okay.
in that account. And
So that's where we
that,
get it
which is
from.
drawing about $35,000 per month right now.
Okay.
So we're good then?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we will put something for the September board meeting. The only other thing underneath my non-action items, and I typically won't be this long-winded, would be starting in September, I will have all of the building administrators at our board meetings. I believe it's important for them to be here. I'm going to actually have them give you a written report each month that they'll hand to you at the start of every meeting that you guys can look over. If there are questions that you have, there will be an opportunity during that, but I'm not planning on having them do a formal presentation, but at least they will be here present. So it'll be all 4 building administrators and Emily Hill, our special ed director, and then periodically I will also have facilities and technology here to probably give a little more formal report of what's going on. But I thought I believe it's important for them to be here in case there are questions that need to be asked and to be able to interact when necessary. So that'll start in September. Okay, so then action items. The first one is general district business. We need to approve the resolution declaring transportation to be impractical. Letter B is approve the following for the lunch price change. We originally had approved 1 through 6 at $2.50 and 7 through 12 as $3. Gail had kind of relooked at that and thought we could go back down on 7th and 8th grade as well. I think you did that back in June, if I'm not mistaken. So that's letter B. And then C, as I mentioned, I think to all of you in my update, approving Frost Brown Todd as our additional legal consultant for the school year.
Okay, do we have a motion? Mr. Jewell? Second. And Mrs. Milligan, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Number 2 is certified resignations. We're obviously a little well past these, but the resignation of Heather Allison as guidance counselor effective July 26th, and the resignation of Sam Lee as language arts teacher effective August 13th.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Jewell first.
Second?
Mrs. Morris second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Number 3 would be certified employment, approve Heather Bowles as our 5th grade language arts teacher, approve Clay Cleaver as our high school language arts teacher, and Kira Westfall as our elementary pupil services coordinator. Remember, this is in lieu of our guidance counselor. It's not not replacing or adding. That is just simply retitling it until we have her properly certified. So it's not adding any additional position.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Milligan first.
Second?
Second, Mrs. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Number 4 is approve Amanda Warren's resignation as a classroom aide effective July 22nd.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Milligan first.
Second?
Second, Mrs. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Number 5 is classified employment for employees. Several of them are substitute. There is 1 full-time and 1 4-hour position as well.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Jewell first.
Second?
Mrs. Morris second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewell? Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Number 6, I'm not going to read all those. You guys can look through it. And I'm going to do the same with number 7, but these are obviously supplemental resignations.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Morris first.
Second?
Second, Mrs. Milligan. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
And then, of course, number 7, as same. There's quite a few of them because of 1 position, basically, but a lot of supplementals on there.
Yes.
A couple volunteers as well for our band program.
Okay, do we have a motion? Mr. Jewell first.
Second.
Mrs. Morris, second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jewell? Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, that concludes my first Carlisle Board of Education report.
Thank you,
You
Mr. Fisher.
survived.
Thanks. I'm hoping to make an impact. I guess I have.
We don't have anything for legislative because Molly's not here. Anything with MVCTC?
They have their regular board meeting on July 16th.
Okay.
And it was just a regular board meeting, but they've started up and everything is kind of moving in. They're revamping a lot with the parking with the new building. But it's really looking nice up there.
Oh, good.
I
Thank
will,
you.
I will share a funny story real quick about that. As you guys are aware, we did put something outside to try to detract the geese,
Yeah.
or I guess the gaggle of geese that we have out there. We believe it has worked, but I had someone from CTC call me asking what we're doing because they want to try that at their building as well. So we're trying to be, I don't want to use the word trailblazers because I can't say that anymore. But I can't say blazers anymore either. We're leading the way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and they do have quite a few.
Yes.
Do we have any old business? Any new business? Okay, we can adjourn then. We got Bill for first, Mr. Jewell for first,
Second.
second for Mrs. Morris. Roll call, please.
Seems to be a
Mr.
trend
Jewell?
there.
Mrs. Morris?
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes,
Time is 6:20.
thank you.
Thank you.